Coming up, the mega franchise that wasn't. Sahara is next on Reckoning with Jason Herbert. My name is Jason Herbert. I'm a Southerner who lives in the West. I'm a historian, an outdoorsman, and a movie buff. I like finding new answers to old questions, and this is a reckoning. All right, so I feel like this episode of the pod is as much a production of history as anything that we do, because Colin and I have been talking about doing this pod now, Derek, for like, I think since the second day we knew each other.
Oh, wow.
And this movie is like got this weird. Every time I talk about this movie, we've been talking about this movie all week. People are like, yeah, we're gonna do Sahara this week, blah blah blah. People are like, oh, is that the one with? Yeah, and people kind of know this movie, but I don't care.
Yeah,
I love this movie. I have been ready. I almost even read a book, but I didn't.
I did, so I'll help you out with that.
I know. We're gonna jump into this movie, into the story. I think I love the idea of this movie more than anything else. But we'll get into it because I feel like there's some thoughts here. But before we do that, you guys want to introduce yourselves and say like who you are and what you're doing here? Because this is kind of a special thing. We're kind of talking about this film, but also the work. And Colin, you've been on a bunch, and we talked about Project Recover a bunch. But I really kind of want to use this movie to kind of talk about the work that you guys do because I just think it's so freaking cool.
Yeah, I'm Colin Colbourn. I have a PhD in history, and I'm the lead historian for Project Recover. It's my job to sort of help basically start every single case, start every search. It all starts in the archives. It starts with the history. And so that's kind of my role, is just digging into the past to try to find these guys that went missing.
How about you, Derek?
I'm Derek. I do not have a PhD in history. I have an undergrad in history, but I'm president and CEO of Project Recover and have been a part of the organization now for more than 2 decades. And yeah, the mission is to conduct research missions, search missions, documentation, and recovery efforts in both the underwater environment and the terrestrial environment to locate and recover American service members who are missing in action, so that we can provide some answers to families that have waited far too long. And in addition to that, I spent a career in the United States Marine Corps, 23 years, and I still do a little bit of work in higher education as well as a lot of work with the military populations.
Well, I am Jason Herbert, and I have a PhD, but I'm not a CEO. And I think those are like, we have just a lot of letters now, Derek,
wait a second.
Flying around here.
Derek is Dr. Derek. Don't let him fool you. Don't let him fool you.
Oh, he buried the lead. Okay, I see how it is. Okay, all right. I didn't know we were trading on secrets today. That's good.
Yeah. But Derek is fine, and like we said, you can call me Dirk today if we really want to get into character.
That's fine, but I'm going to be referring to you as Boogie Nights Dirk instead. A film that has not made it onto this podcast yet, because I don't think I can find any grown-ups in my friend group to address.
Yeah, I might be busy when you record that one.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I don't want to get fired. I'm not gonna go on that pod. Okay, so this movie is like Colin's favorite movie. Like, is it Colin? Is this your single favorite film? Like, because this is up there
absolutely not my favorite movie.
Oh, but thank you for that.
But this is a nostalgia movie for me. This is a movie that, I started reading the books when I was in high school before the movie ever came out. And I was very excited for this movie. Right when this movie came out, I was the first time I ever went scuba diving. And so for me, it's very much kind of like a foundational thing in terms of like, whoa, history and adventure can be together. And that was, for me, a real start of something in my brain, sort of thinking, okay, history seems, a lot of people seem to think history is boring. but we could do fun things. We could go find old Confederate gold in Africa or whatever, and um, so that's why this movie I think is special to me. And I don't think it's a bad movie, but I would definitely not put it up as my favorite for sure.
All right, Derek, how about you? Are you a Sahara fan? Where does this movie rank for you in your hierarchy of films?
There's a period in my life from about 2003 to 2009 when people ask me about, hey, remember this movie or this show? And I'm like, I have no recollection of that at all. And the reason is that it was when I was still serving in the Marine Corps and I was deploying pretty much nonstop. So I have these big gaps in entertainment history. And so it's not high up there. I did have to go, wait, have I seen that? I don't know if I've seen that. Let me go back and look. And so I went and rewatched it, and I think I saw it, but I've definitely seen it now. I don't know where I'd place it. I probably wouldn't place it up there in the top, but it's definitely entertaining. It has an incredible cast. You have everything from, a mixture of Indiana Jones to Star Wars to James Bond and everything in between. And I think the director thought the same thing when he was playing it. So it's an enjoyable movie. And I'm not asking to get my time back from watching it. That's for sure.
You know what this movie is? This movie is mashed potatoes. This movie is comfort food. This is a movie that you don't have to like think too much about. I just feel like this movie is like a vibe film. Like this movie, it's really along the lines of like that aura of like National Treasure, where it's kind of it's kind of got that sense to it. I don't know if that kind of hurts it and it hurts or helps it when it comes down to like the way this is, because I went back to watch it. I'm like so excited, and I get really excited to watch like the first half, and then I'm kind of on my phone about 3/4
Yeah.
of the way through.
About that as far as the timing goes and how well the movie may have done or not done, and it was kind of at the end of that, like to your point, comfort food.
Yeah.
And we were getting into this period where every movie had to be this think piece, and you
Mhm.
had to be deeply thinking and watching and focus completely on it. And it was more of, hey, this is entertainment. We're not going to give you a big message. This is just sit back for an hour and a half and enjoy 2 hours and
If
enjoy.
there's one thing that Clive Cussler did well, it was come up with the most insane plots. Like his and also this is like on a scale of like 1 to 100, this is about 30% of as insane a plot as in the book. And so like his whole thing is coming up with these insane ways that the history and then like some sort of modern evil or some sort of thing, they somehow meet together. And that I think that does make for like a comfort adventure kind of thing. In sort of a he's sort of like an Indiana Jones, MacGyver, James Bond kind of figure all wrapped in one. And I think that the books are insane, but that works in a book, but cramming it into a movie, I think, is tough. And I really think they ran into that here.
Yeah, we're gonna break down why this film like kind of doesn't work and where we like would have gone with that here. Uh, in a bit, because I think absolutely, Colin, because I want to know what else happens, and we'll talk about casting with this, because like you watch this movie, it's like, oh my god, this person's in this. What's Delroy Lindo doing in this film?
Delroy Lindo, I
You
know.
know?
I was so excited. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, you forget that he's in this movie. You're watching the credits, like, well, that's all right. Like
Yeah.
you remember Lenny James is in it, but it's like, of course, Delroy Lindo just has this thing where he just kind of pops up.
Yeah.
And there's this fun thing, right, where it's kind of like National Treasure, right, where it's fun that you can play with history and use history as like this fun device to just talk about other stuff or have adventures. And I mean, that's the reason why this is like fun, I think, or at least the idea of this film is fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's solving historical mysteries. And of course, along the way, you have to defeat some sort of giant corporation
Mhm.
or some evildoer of some kind. But when it's crazy to me, and it's become stronger over time. I think, especially with the work that we do at Project Recover, because when we are, and I didn't even realize. I noticed in the movie they did use a sonar. It's a towed sonar, but they did have the sonar in there, which I was like, okay, great. Like I can talk about that. But we map, the underwater battlefield of many places, and we are uncovering actual mysteries, things. There are things in Truck Lagoon and other places where that we still to this day have no idea why it's there, what even in some cases what it is. And so like there's so much there for discovery and for, I mean, I could easily see just ripping that into a giant adventure.
Yeah, I mean in a lot of ways it's like a physical archive in some ways, right? Where you get in the archive and then inevitably you start reading about like, well, what about this? What's this? You know, and so forth. But the first question I have to ask you guys is: can you take an ironclad across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa? I mean, I don't want to get into Rivet County here, but I kind of feel like we're making some big leaps right off the start. Like, Derek, when you watch this, where you're like, wait a second, you guys.
I
Like,
definitely had to pause and go, could they, start to think how far, weather, waves, fuel, all these things. So yeah, it's a leap right from the start. It's
Yeah.
but I don't know what you think, Colin.
I'm first off, I'm an expert. My PhD is actually in ironclad ocean crossing. So we're right up my alley at this point in time. I don't know, anything that floats could technically make it across the ocean. If all the weather is perfect and there's no wave action whatsoever, sure, but doubtful, highly, highly, highly doubtful.
I mean, they had a hard time getting these things to float in a river.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did, but I mean, I also didn't know that we had, giant vessels made of concrete that sailed across the oceans to carry water in World War II. I mean, there are lots of things that were made into boats that I didn't really know could do it. That being said, obviously, I think it's a ridiculous premise, and could it? Sure, maybe.
Sure, right? I mean,
there's just enough of a maybe.
Enough, right? Because if the weather were completely calm and you got the right currents, which somehow would work against you because sailing from Virginia, following the Gulf Stream would take you to Europe, but not out, and you'd have to like fight against. Okay, cool, yeah.
That's where I found myself going. Where would the currents take?
Yeah, exactly. You're already thinking
once
too
they
much.
ran out of fuel, and they're like, wait, this is a clandestine mission, so you have no support, so no refuel, no.
Right, like you show up like, why is everyone speaking Portuguese? But that does okay. So that actually kind of does lead into like a real question that I've got for you guys, because long as I've been friends with Colin, he's always going off, and you guys are doing this cool discovery stuff. And part of this is like discovering this ship or this boat that we should not be there. At the same time, you guys talk like, as long as you've been doing this, have you come across stuff where you're like, wait a second, this should absolutely not be here? Like, have there been situations where you've run into like, what is this doing here? And were you able to figure out why? I guess is my question. What's the weirdest thing you found in a place?
Well, there's a couple of those. Definitely, what is this? Because we often find things that we're not looking for. I think one of the more entertaining is we were in the middle of nowhere jungle, deep in the jungle in Palau, nothing really around, and an archaeologist colleague, we hear her, hey, I think I found some sort of airplane, and like, huh, and so we make our way over there, and it was not an airplane, not even close to an airplane. It was a barber's chair, and it was a heavy duty barber's chair in the middle of the jungle. And it was kind of like, how did this get here? How, and who brought it here? Why did they bring it here? And, it was definitely too heavy to be on an airplane. It wasn't an airplane seat. But Japanese activity had taken place in that part of the jungle. We're assuming it had to be somehow associated with them, but it was deep in the jungle. We had no idea how it could possibly have gotten there. But
like, how many bed bugs must it have for you to take it that deep into the jungle? It's like, at what point are you like, this has to be put so far into the jungle that only Project Recover will find it in 80 years?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just wondering if it like falls out of a cargo plane. Like, I'm thinking now about like,
that was a thought too, but it would have been destroyed. And
right.
it looked like it was almost functional. If you would have greased it up a little bit, cleaned it off, you probably could have got in and got a fresh cut. And but we didn't do that.
What'd you end up doing to it? Did you just leave it there?
Left it where it was.
That's
Yeah.
a big heavy thing in the
Just
middle of the
don't
jungle.
fact, it was older than 50 years old, so we couldn't take it out anywhere. It's definitely not in my house. I promise you that.
Yeah. Unlike Dirk Pitt, we tend to leave things as they lie. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're like real life archaeologists are nowhere near as fun because the whole laws and patriation and ethics thing. But here's my thought: is this the best credit sequence ever made of a film? Because I think maybe the credit sequence might be my single favorite part of this entire film.
Yeah, it's a really great sequence, and it's such a great way of telling an entire backstory without having to use up a lot of like actual acting time in the film, especially because they obviously had to cram so much into this movie. And like of all the, I mean, this film gets a lot of flack from like critics. Most people actually kind of liked it. It kind of like middle of the road, like
it's fine,
like 7 out of 10, kind of like, yes, this is good. But the one, that is it, amidst a whole movie of kind of like interesting decisions, this amazing credit sequence that is such a great storytelling device. It really does pop out.
It builds that function that you mentioned. I mean, how many old credit sequences are just, especially like in the 70s, where it seemed like they were 45 minutes long. And you're just like, can we get to the film already? And then finally, these days we figured out creative ways of, introducing who's in the movie and not. And this one is actually supportive of, hey, we're going to give you some background. We're going to help build the story with this credit sequence. And I found myself kind of like, ooh, what's that? And ooh, what's in there?
Right. Like you see these two guys who coming up together and the music is right. Like it's got the right vibe to it. Like the vibe this movie hits off with a really cool opening sequence of the whole Confederate ship. And then you're launched in the credits. You're thinking, shit, this is going to be good. Like I'm good for an hour and a half here. And
it starts so strong.
It does.
And even Rachel was like, because Rachel had never seen it. We watched it together, and she was like, "What are we doing in Virginia?" Right? This movie's called Sahara. Like, what's going on?
But
here?
wait, Rachel.
And it just draws you right in, and then the credits tell that's like great story to sort of explain, because really
the
like
relationships.
These two characters, Pitt and Giardino, are their hope would be these two main characters for a whole series of movies that would go on for years. So, what a cool thing to use.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I want to get into this because maybe the best part of this. There was another film that reminded me of. The movie wasn't very good, but the opening credits was, which was the X-Men Origins Wolverine film.
Oh, I don't.
Did you guys see that one?
I saw it, but I don't remember the credits were.
I don't remember.
It's like Wolverine and Sabretooth going through time, fighting in the Civil War, and then World War I, and then Vietnam, and it's like really cool. And then the rest of the movie is awful. It's just complete garbage. The rest of the thing, and I love Liev Schreiber. Like he's just shiny, but the movie is bad.
It actually makes me wonder, knowing that this film had a lot of writing problems.
Yeah.
Those, something like the credits telling that story, is that a writing decision or is that a directing decision? I wonder. I
don't know. We're going to get into the directing thing here in a bit, though, because this film gets hampered by there's a lot of history around this movie.
Oh, yeah.
That I think is kind of fun to look at.
It's got its own lore.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
But Colin, you're our resident Sahara and Cussler expert, if I'm correct. Do you want to talk a little bit towards the casting? Like, what do you think when we look at it? When you think about Dirk Pitt, there's two guys we've seen on screen as Dirk Pitt. One is Richard Jordan, right? And the other is Matthew McConaughey. What do you think here? How's the casting for this film?
I think that Matthew McConaughey was fine. I actually think that was a fine pick. I think that he was good. Steve Zahn, interestingly, was the best casting move in the whole movie.
Really?
I mean, in my mind, Steve Zahn stole the whole movie with all his stuff. But that being said, he is almost the complete opposite of what the actual character is in the books. In the books, Giardino's like this gruff, small, like built like a rock, like muscly, like, he's like, I don't know, just buff dude that's, supposed to be very small. And then I had heard that the two casting decisions they wanted to make were either Jack Black or Steve Zahn for the role. So they clearly just wanted a
foil,
just
right?
kind of like a comedic sidekick. And I'm surprised to hear you. I thought Steve Zahn was phenomenal in this movie, but
I like Steve Zahn.
Yeah, and Penelope Cruz, great. I'm a fan. Second movie we've done now with Penelope Cruz, Jason. So
you're welcome for that. But here was my problem with Steve Zahn, fellow Kentuckian. What's that face? He's from Kentucky. He's one of my people.
He's from Mississippi. I still don't know why you said that.
Because he's a big Kentucky basketball fan.
Okay, all right.
He's one of my people, and that makes him one of mine, just like Abraham Lincoln. So
he's a Hoosier. Yep, go ahead,
dude. I won't come across the screen, Derek. You don't know that Colin and I have beef across the Ohio. My problem with Giardino is like he's a Navy SEAL and doesn't know how to tie a necktie.
Oh, that was Derek. What did you think of that? Did you notice that?
I didn't even catch that, but now that you pointed out, it is. I mean, because I was caught up in this is what they're creating the character to be, this comedic sidekick. But I didn't even think about, you're a SEAL and you don't know how to tie a knot.
Rachel, it was the first thing Rachel said. She goes, don't they learn like a million knots? He doesn't know how to tie a tie.
Work in the water. They're the part, the division of the Navy.
Well, and he's also on a ship as a deckhand. So he should know how to tie knots. Now, not the same knots you're tying around your neck to put on a tie, but yeah.
And there's some other stuff later on. Like there's a spot later on. Like I'm thinking, as I understand the Navy SEALs, these guys are just completely trained to handle not only like American-made stuff, but like an AK-47 would be just very familiar to most any branch, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah.
How are you missing? How is this guy missing shots? I mean, this is a PG film. I get it.
Yeah, that was a really interesting sequence where I had the same thought. I was like, the other thing is like he is kind of supposed to be the guy that like whenever Dirk's getting in trouble, he's kind of like coming behind him and like taking care of stuff and like, really sort of not the serious guy necessarily, but the get it done guy.
He's Chewbacca.
Yeah, and then to like miss every shot as you're like running towards someone to eventually throw the gun away and just starts running and screaming at them. That was an interesting choice.
And he does swing back and forth. So, he's the fixer on the ship taking care of things. But then later on, he's not hitting his targets with his weapons, but he's the one that's taking care of the weapons in the back of the Jeep when they're driving across the
right.
So he's going through function checks and he's
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Got all sorts. So it's like, all right, the weapon, but maybe his excuse, of course, would be like, well, it wasn't zero or something weird like that.
It wasn't zero, dude.
Derek, as a former Marine, is it difficult to say good things about the SEALs? Like, is that rivalry still there between like the other like how does that work? Like when you were active.
Yeah.
And so forth. I know there's the rivalry and stuff like that between divisions and branches and such, but like, do you also go, these guys pretty good?
Well,
like Delta Force,
the inter-service rivalry is there, of course, it's really there, but there's also the respect of our sister service. It's just like a sibling rivalry, right? We can pick on each other, we can call each other names. Just once somebody outside of the circle says anything, then we all send
fuck up.
Yeah. And we're like, whoa, you're not in the inner circle. You can't say that type of thing. But, the work that I do serves all our military branches and their families. So I have a healthy amount of respect for every single person that toes the line and swears no to our Constitution. But yeah, there's some good ribbing there. And I can't say, when somebody shows their ass in one of the other branches, I don't giggle a little bit sometimes.
When you guys are out and about doing the work that you do you ever encounter Spanish maids who are doctors? Because I was wondering if you were hiring, because I would do that. Like can we talk about Penelope Cruz? I feel what's our thoughts on Penelope Cruz in this film?
I mean, I thought she was fine. I thought she was better in Ferrari. But it was her at Ferrari, right?
Yeah, she was Ferrari. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah,
terrible.
Made me see. Yes, I thought she was fine. Written better in the movie than she was in the book. She was much more damsel in distress in the book. Clive Cussler kind of famously not very good at writing women. Turns out.
Oh, he's Taylor Sheridan. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I think for the movie, good. Didn't seem to have a huge amount of impact on the film necessarily, but
yeah, Derek, what do you think? Are you pro or anti Cruz here?
I am definitely pro Cruz, Penelope Cruz. No, I mean, I have a hard time finding bad things to say about Penelope Cruz.
I mean, it felt like it was a 2005 that someone comes out. They're like, okay, these two actors are hot, or like not just pretty actors, but like they're hot right now. Let's put them in a movie and sell tickets.
You got hot in multiple ways, I think is what we're thinking about too. And that actually made me think, because was this was about the era, or was it a little bit later than this, when Matthew McConaughey was like, okay, I'm done with the kind of romantic comedy type of stuff. I'm going to find my serious role and become a serious actor. Yeah. And I mean, he wouldn't do this film today.
No,
he wouldn't do this film today. But I had read that this was when he was trying to break out of like romance, and into like some kind of like leading roles, adventure, and like something that was different than the rom-com.
Yeah, he's. I follow him on social media, and I actually have a copy of his book. Green Lights right over here on my shelf, where he talks about that whole thing where he was getting typecast. This would have been before he makes that decision, because I think he dated Penelope Cruz for a time during this, and then met his wife Camila Alves, and like he talks about this, like he and his wife made this decision where he's like, look, this is going to dry up, and we're going to move to Texas from Hollywood, and I'm just going to say no. And it might get real skinny here for a while, right? He made some real admirable choices based on his thought. Is like, we may run out of money here, dear, but I feel like this is important, and I can't keep making these rom-coms. And I think that served him well when he comes back with the HBO series that he ended up True Detective.
True Detective.
He was so. Because like, this guy is an actor, but sometimes when you're starring opposite the latest, ingenue, it's like, okay, he's the goofy, handsome guy, and blah blah blah. It's like, I get it. There's only so many movies you can make with Jennifer Lopez, but I would do that if anyone's listening.
Well, I can't blame him for dating Penelope Cruz.
She is a beauty.
No, and she's good. And I feel like the chemistry is good between the two of them.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have this insane, ridiculous supporting cast. William H. Macy is like fifth billed in this movie. Rainn Wilson is in this movie. The one French guy from the second Matrix film.
I was wondering where I recognized him from too.
That's where he was like, I wrote down, I was like, is he bad because he is French, or is he French because he is bad? Like Lenny James from Walking Dead is in this. And of course, Delroy Lindo shows up.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, like, we get that. Here's where they do us a solid. Do us a solid in the credits, and then also these little scenes between like Macy and Lindo, and there's like, you owe me from that thing I did. And it's like, I know that I owe you from that thing you did. But if I do this thing, then we're even. Are we even now? Yes, we're even. But until the next time, one of us needs a thing that has to happen. And you're like, what's the thing that happened? Yeah. I want to know.
That was a setup for a prequel if this was a big success.
Oh my God, dude. I would totally do that series, like set in it'd have to be in Nam, right? I mean, it's not, based on age, or maybe Grenada. The thing nobody ever talks about Grenada anymore.
Well, he was a spook, so it could have been anywhere.
Oh yeah,
could have been anywhere.
Oh, I would be down.
That's a very common thing in the Sandecker is also a big like part of all the books. Like He's like a big deal in all the books, and there is always he always knows someone, and is always calling in a favor, or like
It's like a
people like
liaison.
clearly really want to like do stuff for him and help him out, and so that's kind of like his Cussler's way of just sort of getting out of any trouble whatsoever. Is you can always just call in the U.S. government.
It's like, oh wait, I know this one guy. He'll do this thing because I saved his daughter in Somalia one time or something.
And between him and Dirk Pitt, there's always like a buy me a bottle of tequila, or like I'll give you. So it's always tequila beans traded around or something like that. So
this sounds awesome. What else don't we see in this film though, Colin? You said that it's like we're getting a third of the book in the film.
Yeah.
Like what else aren't we seeing?
There's a ton, but the two biggest, I thought, most interesting ones is so when you're reading the book, the book always starts in a historical setup.
Okay.
But in this one, there were actually two different historical setups that were going to come down the road. So the first one is an aviatrix that's kind of like a Amelia Earhart that goes missing in the desert.
Ooh.
And this is the 1920s or 30s, something like that. And she goes missing in the desert. And of course, do you know what that ends up being in the movie?
She falls in love with a Tuareg guy.
That's right. No.
Am I serious? No? Did you run?
No.
Oh, dang.
No, it's the plane that they find and turn into a wind surfing.
I hated that sequence. It just felt tacked on.
Well, that was a major part of the plot.
What was left, right?
Yes, and so then that was another discovery that they made. So then,
right, okay.
The other big thing I
remember they used her femur as a rudder.
Yeah, exactly. The other big thing that was like the most insane part was in the Confederate ironclad. It wasn't just gold that was in the Confederate ironclad. The whole thing was
heritage.
The whole thing, yeah, right. The whole thing was that as they were about to go through the Union blockade, and the Union was about to fire, they were basically going to sink the CSS Texas, which obviously also none of that is true. It was scrapped after the war. But anyway, they hauled up an individual on top of the ship, and all the ship saw who it was, and they didn't fire on them, which is how they were able to get through. And then in the end, we find out that person was actually Abraham Lincoln.
What?
That they had staged his assassination and instead had kidnapped him for apparently just the purpose of getting through the blockade. I don't really know what it ended up being the purpose was, but that was like this huge thing, is that when they find the ship, they find the remains of Abraham Lincoln inside it.
I'm just imagining interjecting Daniel Day-Lewis into this film all of a sudden. Yeah,
exactly, man. So those are kind of like two of the insane plot points. There were many more. There was a whole thing with the Tuaregs that were captured, that were working in the evil Frenchman's lair. And there was like a slave overseer kind of a person, a black woman was like a slave overseer, and that was a major character in it that they sort of didn't really dig into. But apparently, so I don't know if you saw this, Derek, but like there was a whole lawsuit about this movie because Clive Cussler claimed they didn't give him enough writing credits or ownership of the writing.
Changed too much,
and because of that, they actually had all of the financials from the film. And apparently, they shot a $2 million scene with this woman that and the slaves and all that kind of stuff that they never intended to publish. It was only to show to Cussler, to show him that they had done it, and that they had never intended it for it to actually be in the film. Which is insane. So anyways, but so there were some, a lot. It was, there's so much into that book. It's 70 chapters, I think. It's all these little like short chapters and stuff. So
that was I think a big thing about my understanding as the quote unquote failure of the box office was that, not that it didn't do well, it did pretty well, but the budget was so inflated because they filmed aviation crash scene, and they had that part as part of the film, and then it ends up being, a wind sail.
Yeah, right.
Not
Yeah.
this lost
Yeah.
aviation. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
and they brought in like 8 writers and paid each one $500,000 to punch up the screenplay. I also thought it was interesting. Jason, did you see the how much each actor got paid?
Oh yeah,
So McConaughey. Well, I mean, I saw the 3
McConaughey made like 14 million, something like that.
McConaughey made like 8 million, I think is what they said.
Okay.
Eight, maybe it was 40, but Penelope Cruz made 1.5.
Right.
And then they said Rainn Wilson was the other one. He made
$45,000.
$45,000. I was like, oh,
I'm just like wondering like how dinner works out. Like if you're looking at if you're Rainn Wilson and you're sitting across the table and you're like, I'm not picking this check. Like, it's all going. All right, we should. We're on the subject now. We should probably talk about this. There is another real problem with this film, which is the director. Does anyone know the director of this film?
Only from the research I've done and recognizing the last name.
Breck Eisner. His full name is Breckenridge.
Yeah. Michael Breckenridge, right? So he's not Michael.
You're right. So,
he is, but not.
So this is one of 3 films apparently he's ever directed. This was his very first film that he ever directed. I'm sure that has absolutely nothing to do with his relationship with the head of the studio, Michael Eisner, who was head of Disney for the longest time. And look, I'm a Disney homer. I love Michael Eisner. But oh my gosh, was this kid in over his head? Because you've got, Colin, as you alluded, you've got all these writers, you've got these budget overruns. And I think, Derek, you're absolutely right. I think there's this thing where people get in their heads like, oh, this movie's not making any money. I don't want to see it. It must not be any good because of all these problems around it and stuff. And I think once that stuff starts to leak out, it really does. Everyone loves a scandal. Like, ooh, it's doing bad. Like if they kept this thing on budget, this is probably a fine mid-major film. If you make this movie for $60 million and it makes 95, you're fine.
It made over 100 million in the box office,
right?
But it cost 160 to make. Right. So
yeah,
no, and the other part of the issue is that Clive Cussler was already shitting on this movie before it came out.
Real problem with that. Yeah,
and
because what's the fan base going to do?
Yeah, and he had also, I guess, inflated the number of books he had sold. He claimed that he had sold 100 million books, and it was, only 42 million books apparently. But so the studio apparently accused him of overinflating how popular the books were, but he was already shitting on it. And I mean, we talked a lot about Masters of the Air. So Project Recover, we have a documentary called To What Remains, which, taught me a lot too about when you have so much to talk about, how do you cram it all into a really small amount of time? And, I translating any book, no one who reads the book is usually going to like the movie more, of course. But I'm really curious to know what Clive Cussler, what he really expected of this versus what, which came out, which I actually think that the story it's fine. Like, it's not bad by any stretch.
Yeah, but even then, I feel like the film, like looking at it, this movie is just over 2 hours long. I feel like it's probably 25 minutes too long. This movie still feels bloated.
It does.
Yeah, it's a little bit long. I agree. They could have edited it down. Even 15, 20 minutes would have really just made a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that you need the secondary antagonist for this. I think you could have probably kind of merged the French dude and Lenny James's character or something along those lines.
That's a good point too. I mean, you have to shoot someone with a Civil War cannon. Yeah, I mean, it has to.
That part's working. We're all building to that set piece where that's going to, and that thing is fun, right? Yeah, cool. I mean, listen, we love that. I want to ask you guys a real question now. Very early in the film, we see a museum set piece. And I'm kind of wondering, in your own work with Project Recovery, are you often having to work with like museums as well, or is there like is repatriation concerns when you're out in the process of discovery, and also like what is it like having to negotiate with say international boundaries? So many of the places that you go to are not say within the United States. Like, how does this take place? Is this a thing that kind of takes place at your level, Derek, where you're having to like negotiate the ability to go in and do the work and do the do the recovery sites, and then like what happens say if you find say if you're able to find say a missing service member or something like that, what happens to whatever else that you find? Like, I guess that's what, can you take me through the process of maybe finding a thing outside the United States and what happens then?
Well, I'll start with saying that it happens at every level.
Okay.
So yes, it happens. You do a lot of prep to make sure that you can execute this mission in the countries that we go to, and every single country has its own rules related to what we're doing, and then we have different pieces of our mission set. So if we're going in and doing a basic reconnaissance mission or something like that, then that's it's not as intrusive. We're just talking to people and we're building relationships. But you do have to be sensitive to, you're working in another country, you're working there with their permission, and if you mess something up, your chances of working there in the future are limited or non-existent. And so it does start often at the highest level with just permitting, but every single individual that's executing the mission is contributing to that, and can be successful in growing those relationships, or they can also spoil those things as well. So when we're looking for people to work in on our team and work in these other countries, they have to have some sort of cultural awareness, emotional intelligence, to make sure that they're being respectful of the countries that we're working in, learning about them. We many times when we're working someplace new, we don't know a lot except for what we might read in a book, which will kind of bring it back to the museum piece. And I'll let Colin talk about that, because we work with museums in all sorts of different ways. And if you ever hear me talk about how we start this mission, I always say it starts in the basement of some archive somewhere, and that's the part of the mission that a lot of people don't want to do, but that's where everything starts. Is we're building out these cases and bringing in as much information as we can, and many times that's an archive or a museum someplace that has a lot of these historical records. Um, so that's the first part of it, and then the other part of it is, but before we get into kind of finding something, or what goes into, or goes what happens with the artifacts and the site and stuff when we do find somebody and the things around them. But Colin, you want to add on kind of your experience with museums and the archives and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because museums can be very national, can be very international, or they can be really, really local. And so we work with big museums. I was at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum a month ago, doing research on SB-2C Helldivers and working in their archives. And then also, we can be in Germany or Italy or little tiny Chuk in Micronesia, and there will be a museum. Often there is some kind of local museum that is there to preserve their history. And even though we're working on sort of an American problem set, it is local history to many of these countries. And so, museums are such a fascinating realm to work in because they are, again, so personal in some cases and so local. In Germany, we were working with an air history museum that was at an old Nazi Luftwaffe testing facility, and it was on a lake, and inside that lake, American airplanes had crashed, and so inside their incredibly detailed and incredibly thought through history of aviation technology in Germany, there's a B-17 propeller, or pictures of a B-24 being fished out of the lake that ended up taking us down a whole different road with one of our investigations. When I'm in Chuk, and there's a big high school there called Xavier High School, a Jesuit high school that's there, and they have a Micronesian history museum up there. And on top of some of the stuff you'd expect to see there. They also have like charts and nautical things that tie into the history of Japan and when Japan was there. So museums are an incredibly important part of what we do, and um, of course, unlike the movie, we don't find a giant, thing, and what was it, a sarcophagus, and they
And
brought it
then
to the
2 hours
surface.
later, it's
It was gold and perfectly polished and all that kind
he's
of stuff.
standing on top of it as they're bringing it out of the water.
Um, but I'll let Derek, take over if he's got other examples. But when we do find a lot of things that are not what, as we mentioned in the past, we're not what we're looking for. Um, Now, most often, what I've been working with is a lot of the underwater museum stuff, and a lot of that stuff really needs to stay put in many cases to preserve it the best. Or if they take it out, it is tremendously expensive to preserve and desalinate a lot of these items that we're finding. And there are some places in Marshall Islands or Micronesia or these places where that's easier to do. Germany, easier to do. But in a lot of cases, we're either talking to the local government, or we're talking to the local government, and or if we find Japanese things, we're trying to communicate that to the Japanese government or the German government, so that they can treat this as an artifact of their own as well. So, we don't bring things to museums, but we notify always what we find, and then the local government can do what they want to do with that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, as you can imagine, people find us and they get excited about our work, and then I don't know how many times this has happened to me where I'll be visiting with somebody and they'll be like, look what I found. I pulled this from a battle site, and it's a helmet or a round or something, and in my mind I'm like, that's highly illegal.
Mm.
Like, you don't realize who you're talking to, and this you shouldn't be bragging about this stuff. And so, but there's we're obviously, we all have a um, we're all fans of history. We have a great deal of respect for a lot of these things, and I've definitely seen things that we've located and been like, wow, this would be a really cool mantelpiece, but unfortunately, it's going to stay where it's at, and then we'll document it. But how it goes when we do locate something or we do conduct an excavation is, well, first, we go in with a general plan. Through all that research that's done in the case building, we try to come up with a search area, whether it's in the water or on land, that's manageable. Ultimately, can we cover this much space given the time that we have available? We'll get the appropriate permissions from the highest level down to the lowest level to access those areas, whether it's the president of the country all the way down to the landowner, and maybe tribal systems and things like that, to gain permission and access to that. And then we'll use a variety of technologies to search that area, from side scan, which we've mentioned. The good thing is we're not doing so much towed, although we still do some towed side scan, sonar, and other things. But nowadays it's automated underwater vehicles with a variety of sensor suites in the water, and then on land. Um, right now on land, most of what we're doing is still, boots on the ground, a machete in hand, and a compass in your pocket, and just using your eyeballs to search the areas, and maybe a metal detector or things like that. We're starting to implement some more drone technology and other things like that to search land environments. And then once we find something, the thing that we like to do is determine, is it man-made? Is it what we're looking for? If it's an aircraft, is it the aircraft that we're looking for? Sometimes we find aircraft or other things that aren't what we're looking for. They're not necessarily MIA sites. If they're not MIA, we document them quickly, and then we continue to look for the sites that we are trying to find. As Colin mentioned, if it's something American, of course, we document that. We share that with the host country. If it's something associated with another country that might have been fighting in that area, we'll typically share that with them through the State Department and things like that. But we'll continue to do our search until we find sites associated with MIAs. That's what our mission is. And then we'll go into a full-on documentation of that site. We confirm this is likely what we're looking for, or associated with something that we're looking for. We document it as well as we can with the time that's available. Sometimes we'll come back again to do a full length documentation. And that's why we always have an archaeologist on hand when we're executing these missions, so we can immediately go into that documentation phase. And in the event that we do find exposed human remains, we can immediately create a chain of custody that is going to bring them back through the appropriate channels to the United States, assuming that they're American. Um, but yeah, so we do a documentation, and the documentation is to prepare for ultimately an excavation, whether it's underwater or on land. The approach is actually pretty much the same. Um, it's just you're working in the underwater environment, which adds some additional complexities and things like that. But once you get to the excavation stage, it's gridding out the site and then recovering all that material and putting it through a screen, a quarter-inch mesh screen, to find any potential human remains or any artifacts that can assist with an identification, and things that are relatively obvious, like dog tags, but then other things like rings, watches. If it's a multi-crewed aircraft or something like that, it could be life-saving gear that gives us an idea of where that person was in the aircraft. And then almost anything and everything outside of that stays on the site. Um, so the aircraft, if it's a Navy or Marine Corps aircraft, that is forever owned by the Navy. So it'll stay there. If it's an Army Air Force aircraft, they have other approaches to historical aircraft. But no matter what, we don't recover any of that material. It all stays on that site. And same thing with any other site that we might find, whether it's an aircraft, American or others, ancient sites, ships, all sorts of different things. We record it, and then we turn that over to the appropriate agencies, whether they're American, the host nation, or others.
Derek, like, who pays for all of this stuff? Because I'm imagining some rich uncle in Wichita. Is
Yeah,
I'd like for you, I'd
I'd
like
like
to
to
you to
be that
find my,
person that we
you
you have that
know,
connection.
yeah, like,
Is that
how,
your uncle?
yeah, like who? So is this funded by grants to the federal government? Is it private donors? Like
Yeah,
this sounds incredibly expensive to do
it
the
is.
job right. Like, how does this get paid
It's
for?
not a cheap mission, and we do not cut corners. We can't cut corners. We have to do everything above board, and so we're a nonprofit charity. This mission is executed primarily with the support and the charity of the public. So people that give large and small donations to our organization are how we advance it. In addition to that, we are an official partner of the Department of Defense and the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. So, as a partner entity with them, they will come to us to execute any piece of that mission set from time to time. But we've worked really hard to kind of shift the weight of our missions to more unilateral work, um, primarily executed by the nonprofit, and that gives us a lot of flexibility. So we prioritize our missions ultimately by highest likelihood of success. Colin and his team are constantly building out cases, and we'll review those cases on a regular basis. And ultimately, the determination on priority is, yeah, will we be successful with this? What's the likelihood of success with access to the area, resources available, and things like that? But then we also do what we call campaigning, and the reason for what that is we pick parts of the world where there are a number of losses in a relatively small area, so that when we send all this people and all this equipment to the other side of the world, we can maximize those resources and work on multiple cases at a time, and hopefully increase that success. So we might have people working on a search mission while we have people doing a reconnaissance or a documentation or even a recovery effort and things like that. And so we really do what we can to maximize those resources and get the most out of every single dollar, because one, these are donations, and we want to make sure our donors are respected and we're using their resources the right way. Um, but yeah, it has an incredible impact, even though it's expensive. It's worth every single penny. You know, when you do an estimate of what it costs to send an individual to war or combat, when we do send people overseas, it's estimated to cost about $500,000 per individual. And when you average out our cost of our mission, it comes down to about $500,000 per mission. And so, you know, if you're willing to spend that money to send them overseas, hopefully we're just as willing to spend those resources to bring them home to those families that have sacrificed the most.
Can I ask you, kind of getting back to the film, we all just watched this just recently.
Yeah.
I was sitting here eating lunch yesterday, was watching. I'm texting Colin back and forth, trying not to talk to him too much. I don't want to ruin the conversation we're going to have. But what are your favorite parts of this film? We go back. I mean, we all had like. I always find when I go back and rewatch something, I'm always picking something back up that's like, oh, you know what, I dug what they're doing here that I maybe took for granted. Are there parts here where you go, you know what, I actually, we all agree this is not a great film, but there's still, it's a fun movie. What do we like here? What's our favorite parts here, Colin? What do you like so much of this movie?
I mean, that's a great question. I love the beginning. I love sort of going back into the history and sort of doing this blockade runner thing. I thought the boat scene, the speedboat up the Niger River, was pretty fun
Yeah,
as well, which was not in the book. They took like an old steamboat, I feel like, in the book.
not as
So pretty.
exciting, right?
And the
Yes,
idea that they've got the walkie-talkie and Sandecker's like listening to the gunfire, and all three of them are like, again, talking about a scene that probably could have been 10 minutes shorter, but all three of them, McConaughey and Steve Zahn and Rainn Wilson, all together doing. I mean, it was a great like ensemble scene. So for me, that was probably some of the best stuff, and I mean, it was fun when they're in the ironclad and getting shot at and firing the cannon and stuff like that. I guess those are kind of my favorites.
what you, Derek?
I was waiting for them to find the ironclad because I was like, they're going to have to fight from this.
Yes.
That has to be coming. And of course, then they're shooting cannons at helicopters and things like that. So, I was thinking about that, and the thing that I caught myself kind of being most entertained about with this film was not necessarily a specific scene, although I did enjoy the fighting with the ship, and also the boat scene was pretty incredible. But I just kept on following the film and being like, and pointing out scenes like, oh, that was a Star Wars scene. Oh, that there's Indiana Jones. Well, there's James Bond. And as this director was just pulling all these different, remaking all these scenes over and over to put this whole film together. And some people might critique that, but I was just enjoying it. And I was like, oh, I seen this in the first Star Wars, and then this one was from this, and this was from this. And so he was obviously a Spielberg fan for sure, but just a general fan of film as well. And so I could see where he was pulling those things. And I just found myself kind of looking for different scenes that were taken from other films.
That's cool.
Now's the fun part. Now you get to nitpick. What drives you nuts in this film?
I mean, for me, I'll be totally honest. Just like
No, be partially honest, Colin.
Okay, I'm going to totally lie. I think that if you're going to go a little bit with the plot points, why not just go all the way? That's kind of where I was like, why not just like? I think the whole thing about this aviatrix going missing and all that kind of stuff that's fun. That's kind of fun, cool stuff. People love Amelia Earhart, and I don't know. That's kind of for me. Outside of the fact that some of it got to be a little slow, but that for me was kind of one of the things I didn't like about it.
For me, it's always the things that come home. I'm like, who's going to come and talk to me about this scene or something like this at a public event? And so, it is things like the archaeology, like him coming up with that sarcophagus. And then 2 hours later, it's a museum. And then of course, we'll be at a public event and somebody's like, why don't you just bring that airplane home and just dig the whole thing up and then put it on a ship and bring it back? And it's like, that's not how this works. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And there's a little bit more detail. So I always get a little bit worked up with anything like that kind of reflects on our work, and how I always kind of forecast, how is this going to turn itself into a conversation that I'm going to have to politely push back on somebody at a public event when I'm like, well, that's not really how this works. We have a joke on, we want to talk, we've talked about getting a shirt made for our organization that says, you should just, and then ... on the front of it. You always run into people, because there's a lot of folks that are missing, and it's a significant number. And so people consistently, and they have the best of intentions, I know, but it's a regular thing for them to say, well, you should just X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, I never thought about that in 20 years. We should just do
We should
that.
just do that thing.
It's the hard work or the easy work has been done. It's a lot of hard work now, and it's something that we're working on all the time. So anything in a film like that, I'm always like, how is this going to turn into a conversation down the road where I just be nice to somebody and not say that's just not how this works.
Can't tell you anything that popped in my mind as I was watching this yesterday. The Niger River scene when they're doing the Panama, right, which is fun. I want to give you 3 words together that form a single creature called the West African crocodile, which is native to the Niger River alongside the Nile crocodile, both of whom swim in said river alongside Matthew McConaughey and Steve Zahn and Penelope Cruz, or Rainn Wilson in this case. I don't see how they're getting it if they can avoid getting shot at by the gunboats, who the worst shots in history. I don't know. And also hippopotami. But like, can you make it 50? If I dropped you 50 yards from shore into the Niger River, can you make it to shore? And I'm not convinced you can.
I just have to make it faster than the guy behind me. I think.
Okay, so really I'm not making it out because I'm like the world's slowest swimmer, right? So,
in the book, they all fell into the water and were immediately eaten by crocodiles. That was the end of the.
That was like the end of the series, and and now there's a new series. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it shows they're kind of waiting in the water too, and I'm like,
I know. I had to say,
feeling it. To the shore.
I'm not waiting. I'm actually doing the crawl thing that you do at the beach. You're just like that,
Oh, that's funny.
All right, Colin, you talk about this film being only a third as long, right? I think one of our frustrations that we never got a follow-up because I think the pieces are there here. One of my central frustrations is I think they gave this to the wrong director who's totally inexperienced. There was also issues of like buying off the Moroccans to film there. Like this thing never should have been given. This was giving the sports car to the kid, or something. You gave the wrong keys to the wrong kid, and so forth. Like with a better director, you probably get at least a shot of a sequel. It's 20 years later. My question is: do we want a sequel? Do we want a new film? And if so, which book would you do it on? Or would this work better as a series? This show in general. And who do you cast as a new Dirk Pitt?
Colin, I definitely want more Dirk Pitt in my life.
I thought you were saying you were putting yourself in to be.
I was like,
well, I mean,
I was like, go, yes, go.
I will message your wife, say Colin wants to pursue Penelope Cruz, Sydney Sweeney, or whoever would be now. But go on.
I definitely want more. And I think the really cool thing about all the books, and I think there were like 19 books for Dirk Pitt. They happen all in all different parts of the world. There's Arctic ones, there's Antarctic books, there's Inca Gold, which I think would be one of my favorite ones to sort of come out. And of course, you're sort of looking for El Dorado, and it's I'm sure all types of problematic, but there's just so many options. It feels so ripe for creating. And of course, like nowadays, isn't the whole thing that like if you don't already have some kind of IP, it's not getting greenlit anyway. And so it's like, I understand. I mean, of course, both movies had problems. Race of Titanic had problems, and Sahara had problems. But I mean, if I was a betting man, I bet they could make a thing out of it. I really do. Now, who to cast? I think it has to be. Oh my gosh!
It's gonna be what, 35? Is that the number we're looking at? How old is this guy gonna be? Dirk Pitt.
Yeah, Glenn Powell, I would say.
Ooh, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
I like this a lot.
I think he would be perfect. Really interestingly, apparently Clive Cussler demanded that the actor had green eyes. I don't know if that was a product of the 2000s, because obviously, like, you can make any actor's eyes green, I guess. But but I would go with Glenn Powell. I think there's so much you could do.
I wonder I mean, does everything boil down to the director? Because I think if the director and Clive Cussler, if you can't, convince the author that this is the right thing to do, and he's sabotaging your efforts from the very beginning, um, I think if you had a director that had a better rapport and just said, "Hey, listen, you wrote the book. We're creating something new based on your story, and this is where we need to go with it. So let's work together and create that understanding of what you're going to move forward with." And you get the right person in place, the right actors. In this case, I mean, I think you had incredible actors.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat what you had in 2005. But you get the hook of the audience, and it does well in the box office. Well, a sequel's gonna come. Look at Dan Brown's series or Mission Impossible. That's just, I mean, what's the Fast and the Furious? If it makes money, they're going to keep on making them, and a movie like that just has a built-in fan base that just keeps on coming back. But I think from the very beginning, that relationship with Cussler could have spoiled everything, and you just weren't going to be successful if he's like, I'm not on board. So,
and I mean, he's dead now.
Yeah, it's no longer a problem. Now we have Cussler's estate's
who owns
attorneys.
the rights then? Yeah, right?
Well, his son Dirk has been writing the books now for quite a while, and I mean, I don't, maybe he feels differently. I feel like if you have the right, like, if J.J. Abrams takes over the Clive Cussler franchise, I think that you can make $1 billion
of it again. Listen,
there's so much material there. It's entertainment. People are going to come. Obviously the books sell, so they like the stories. Now just make it a great visual and easy to follow. You're going to be fine. People will suspend reality, right?
True. All right, I want to ask you guys our big final question here when it comes to this thing. This whole thing has been about discovery and things like that, and so much of what you guys do. Do you sit around the proverbial water cooler and talk about, wow, it'd be really cool to find this or that or whatever, and maybe not even on, say, a mission or a case where you're trying to, find a downed P-38. Is that your favorite plane, Colin? Is that correct?
Yeah, as a fighter, I could probably roll.
Yeah, Derek, you see his face? He's like, yes.
I could do that.
Right. Every time I see it, I'm like, there's Colin's plane. I see it now. I'm like, there's Colin's plane. What discoveries are out there? What is? I mean, for the longest time was the Titanic. Is it Earhart now? Like, it's kind of hinted at in this, because there's like an Earhart-esque kind of story here. Is it every so often we hear about her being discovered? Like, what's out there that's waiting to be found? What do you think? What needs to be found? It's the lost city of gold. What?
Well, there's a lot to be found.
Okay.
Just from Bob Ballard. There's so much under the ocean that we don't know about, and he's doing some incredible work that I think is going to influence our work as well. But the next discovery I get the most excited about, that I like to say, is the next discovery. For us, and it's always, that next family that we get to impact and have a positive influence on is so important to us. And we've been lucky enough to bear witness to that when somebody does come home, and how this impacts those families and communities. And once you kind of see that, it just motivates you to get back out and do more. But there is so much out there that we haven't located, that we haven't discovered, that we're going to continue to find and locate, not only in our organization, but other people as well, with the technologies and things that we're developing, and the way that we can explore new areas and find new things is super exciting. The Amelia Earhart thing, it's on a 2-year cycle. I say is that every 2 years somebody's going to find a fuzzy picture that if you hit your head really hard and you close one eye, it looks like it might be something that Amelia Earhart carried. And I do hope that they do find her site, because it's such a huge, important piece of American history, and something that it's really important to people. That's why the stories keep keep coming up every 2 years. But then I always think, boy, I wish I had those resources, because we could really make a significant impact on in finding a lot of sites. But that's just a piece of American nostalgia that people are going to continue to search for, kind of like that Titanic was before her discovery. So yeah, for me, it's the next site.
Colin, what you got? Is it Area 51? Like,
We know where that's
yeah.
I mean, I've openly said that if I
The world's
won
best pizza. Like, what are we looking for?
If I'd won $1 billion, I would invest it in doing this. Which I know that's Derek, kind of stole the answer, but I look at the amount of money that Numa must have in this movie, and they have this giant research vessel, and think about, Derek, if we had enough money to have just a permanent research vessel and stuff like
Right.
that. How much?
Or if we had the admiral who could pull a favor in every country that we went in.
A bottle of tequila will get us anywhere we want to go. That said, I would say that for me, the ones that we don't find are the ones that I want to find the most, and the biggest, hardest one for me so far, we've not found a lot of I mean, this is a very difficult thing to find stuff under the ocean and in the jungle, and we miss a lot. No matter how much we try to stack the cards in our favor, sometimes the history is wrong or whatever. But the one in Africa that we looked for in early 2024, C-47, had 21 on board. 18 of them were women, representing more than half of all women missing in action from all time. That one airplane, we had so much great historical information, detailed down to a bearing off of a point, a half mile, a coordinate. We had literally everything you would ever want to find that airplane, and it wasn't there. And so, what's the next discovery? I want to go back and find the ones that we missed on. And it's like, you're out there and you desperately just want to have been there on that day to be able to just figure out where the heck, what did you mean by 200 feet offshore? Like, there's no way it's 200 feet. That can't have been what you meant. What did you mean? So there are a lot of, there's some high profile MIAs. Glenn Miller, of course, is a big one, and everyone likes Amelia Earhart's story, but I hate missing. Pat Scannon, who founded Project Recover, has a very enlightened view on that. You've found where it isn't, and now we can move on and look to those other areas, which I love, and I need that as a counterbalance to my own kind of perfectionism. But for me, I want to find every one of these guys.
Guys, that's awesome. I'm lucky enough to where Colin's been able to share with me over the time that we've known each other a lot about the work that you guys do. I have so much respect. I'm not kidding when I tell my, people talk to me all the time. It's like, what do you do as history when you're not a professor? And the work that you guys do is so important. And I think the thing that comes through to me, I don't want to get Colin misty here, but I've seen him get misty talking about the meaning that it gives to the family members when you're able to, bring somebody home. And then also what that means to you on very much, not just a work satisfaction, but very much on a personal level. And that really makes me admire the work that you guys do so incredibly much. So even more than the great film Sahara that we've been talking about for the last hour and 15 minutes. So guys, thank you so very much for coming in and talking about this movie, but more about your work. I think it's amazing. Let's go find another C- film to do at some point in time and go from there.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for having us and letting us talk about Project Recover and more Clive Cussler books, movies. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm on board.
Awesome. And that's a wrap here at Reckoning with Jason Herbert. Thank you so much to our guests, Derek, Abbey, and Colin Colbourn. Guys, that was a blast. I've already made plans to have you back on the podcast again. Come back often. That was so much fun. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to Fletcher Powell for producing this show. And thank you to all of you for being here and being part of this community. Please keep sharing the pod. Keep listening. Keep telling me I'm great. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time. Ciao for now.